Well, all right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here today. My name is Matt Killian. I'm the president of the Brainerd Lakes Chamber of Commerce. It's nice to see all of your smiling faces and your smiling nameplates on the Zoom meeting today. I appreciate everyone coming and plugging into the legislative special session that we're expecting here in the next week. I just want to thank all of you once again for getting engaged and paying attention to the issues that are going to impact all of us, but more specifically your businesses in 2021 and beyond. And we want to make sure that your voice is heard at the Chamber. That's what we're about at the Brainerd Lakes Chamber. We are proud to be the voice of business for about 1,100 small businesses and organizations that employ about 20,000 people in Crow Wing and Cass counties and even a little bit beyond that. I also want to thank our legislators for being part of our discussion today. We have Senators Paul Gazelka and Kerry Rude, as well as Representatives John Poston and Dale Lewick. So thank you all for making time for us today. I want to pass along some regrets from Josh Heinzman. He won't be able to join us today because he had a prior commitment, but he wanted to pass along me to pass along his regrets. He wished he could be here today. So I'm sure you're going to be hearing from Josh as usual in the future. He just won't be able to make the webinar today. The other thing I want to say before we get started is this is as nonpartisan a comment as I can make. We have a great team of pro-business representatives here in the Brainerd Lakes area. They've really gone to bat for small businesses throughout this whole legislative session, specifically around COVID issues and tax issues and regulation issues. And we're very, very happy to have a great relationship with all of them. So thanks a lot, John, Kerry, Paul, Dale, for everything that you do for our area. So there are two dates that I want to flag for you before we get started, so we have a little context. The first one is June 14th, and I'm not sure if this has been confirmed yet, but this is the date that the legislature is expected to be called back into the special session for a couple of different reasons. Number one, June 14th would be the date that the governor could elect to extend his emergency powers, his peacetime emergency powers, for another 30 days. And then the other thing would be to, of course, pass the budget bills and finish the work of the legislature, hopefully next Monday. And then the other looming deadline date is June 30th. And by the state constitution, if we don't have a budget passed and signed by the end of the month, state government could potentially shut down on July 1st. So that is the cliff, so to speak, that I know all of our legislators, and well as every citizen in Minnesota wants to avoid. So I'm going to start by getting some perspectives from each of our legislators. We'll go deeper into some business issues. There's been a lot of other issues that have defined the 2021 legislative session, a lot of social issues. We're not going to get so much into those, but we're going to keep it focused on business since this is the Chamber of Commerce. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A at the end. So please be thinking about either raising your hand or typing in the chat a question, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. But I wanted to start out to get your perspectives on this past session. In many ways, it was defined by COVID-19 and lots of policy disagreements between the two parties. The question that I would have is, what are you pleased about that got done? And what's your outlook for businesses moving forward? And Senator Gazelka, I know you've been at ground zero of all of this, including the most recent negotiations. So if you're okay with it, I'd like to start with you. And I'm not sure where he is on the screen.
Sorry about that, guys. Good morning. Well, first of all, it's what we didn't get done is you should be most thankful with every anti-business measure you can think about they want to do. Some of them are still on the table, paid family leave, sick and save time, etc. But We're not going to do any of that. So that's what you should be thankful of. The second thing is we got the full PPP. They did not want to do that. And instead of a tax increase, we got $1 billion of tax relief. So that's probably the biggest win. Just a reminder, we are the only divided legislature in the entire country. And so it makes what we do extremely difficult. But those things I know are going to happen, the tax relief and not doing all of those anti-business things. So that's what I'll mention for this group as a major big win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And I'll just let the others just kind of pop in as you'd like. So Senator and Representatives Post and Luke, whoever would like to jump in, feel free to unmute and do so.
Matt, if I can jump in just real quick from a House perspective, this was a very, very unproductive 6 months. We had no budget bills come to the floor before the end of regular session. And, this is a budget year. So we spent that 6 months not doing the budget. We spent that 6 months working on some really controversial policy, which we should not have been doing. We should have been fixing PPP. We should have been fixing the unemployment issue, and we should have had the budget done by May 17th. But because of the House majority, those bills didn't make their way to the House floor. We didn't get the opportunity to vote on them. Now they're in conference committees, and those conference committees, from what I understand, are not going really well. They're not meeting a lot. There's not a lot of compromise. So how this is going to end, I don't know. Paul probably will have a much better perspective on that than I certainly do. But it was very unproductive, very unfortunate, almost a little bit embarrassing from a House standpoint. Thanks,
Hey,
Matt.
Yeah,
Matt, can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
So John is absolutely correct as far as the things that they wanted that just were non-starters. I mean, there's just too many to count. But I will say that the negotiating, the fact that we got the targets set, that was the tax relief plus what we're going to spend in each area, was really, really important. And was extremely hard to do because we have $3 billion of extra money that came into our budget, and we're very concerned about the future money that we spend. And so that was the big battle. But I will say that we are negotiating, I think, in good faith, and we will get done on time. I don't think people should be nervous that we're not. I mean, without a doubt, it's difficult, but a lot of stuff is going to get thrown overboard, and they're the ones that have the most extreme things that we're just never going to do. But I do know the leadership in the House well enough that they know we're not going to do it. And so you should expect that a budget gets done before July 1, and that a lot of the crazy stuff just gets thrown overboard. And just one thing about July 1, because I've gotten enough people tell me, just shut it all down. And people don't realize that in 2017, the courts changed their ruling and basically said, the court said, we're not going to keep funding Minnesota if it shuts down. We don't think it's our constitutional duty, which means now, instead of 80% of everything being funded, if there was a shutdown, hardly anything gets funded. Think about that: the police or highway patrol, the jails, the nursing homes that have state workers, all the permits that wouldn't get done, all of that doesn't get done now. So there's an urgency, but I would say everybody gets that that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
Well, I'll just add a little positive note on that, because there is something that is done, although it's not passed, but it's agreed to, and so I'm really excited about it. So I'm in charge of the legacy amendment, which is the sales tax that we spend, and we spend it on clean water, parks and trails, outdoor heritage, arts and culture. And so that's $700 million this year that we had to spend, because people, even during the pandemic, they spent money, and we captured the sales tax. And as you know, those pieces of the puzzle are amazing tourism draws to our area. So the fact that they get done is really wonderful. And so we got our bill agreed to May 28th, and it's already been jacketed. And I will tell you that the Senate did a wonderful job. We passed the bill 66-0. It's the first time that a legacy bill has passed unanimously, which gave us a great bargaining tool, great position to negotiate with the House. The House had 22 House-only provisions that were nothing that the Senate was or the state would ever want to do. It's a funding bill. It doesn't, those policy items did not belong in the bill, and we held strong. And so that it's a wonderful thing that got done. I will tell you, my job is, my bill is not involved in the budget. It's a standalone bill. And so the money really is different than the budgeting process. And so I had a really, and I would say an easier time than the chairs do now, trying to solve the budget and how that works. But I'm really excited that that's done. It's agreed to. It's a great bill. It will be do really good things for our area, especially in the culture and heritage. You know, we just the Brainerd School District just opened their new performing arts center. So that's one really positive piece that we've gotten done. And I think that in the negotiations are very difficult, but if we stand strong for the right things, we can get this done. And I just want to compliment Senator Gazelka, because the chairs in the Senate are allowed to negotiate the bills, and we're given the power to make decisions. And I don't think that that happens in the House. And so I had the ability to negotiate the bill, to make the decisions, to stand tough. And that's just because Senator Gazelka and leadership gave me the ability to do that. So I just want to throw that in there.
All right, thank you.
I want to quickly echo one of John's comments, and that is, at least in the House of Representatives, embarrassing is being way too kind to describe what's went on in there. And I'll tell you something, and I'm getting pretty frustrated and tired of, we overuse the word trust way too much with respect to the negotiations that are going on right now, or supposedly going on right now. Make no mistake, on the House side, committee chairs have no jurisdiction from that perspective. And while, you know, I know the Senate is doing everything they can, and thank God that they're able to hold the fort here. But I've been around too long on this earth. There's a point where you really have to understand when you're working with folks across the aisle that can't be trusted. We've seen it time and time again on literally every issue in the House. Public safety is a classic example. Again, embarrassing, and frankly, it's time to really push. No more missing deadlines or anything else. And again, I'm not criticizing the Senate. I'm criticizing my fellow House members, and they just need a swift kick right in the rear end, and a very public one. Thank you.
And Representative, look, I'm going to guess that quote shows up in the newspaper tomorrow.
I hope
so,
because they won't listen to John or I over on in our little world.
he wins the prize for the most colorful quotes to the Lakes area legislative contingent. So thank you for that. Every time we have one of these sessions. I want to move over to probably the issue that has defined 2020 and 2021. And now we're in better times, now that the businesses are reopened and all businesses are able to fully participate in this economic boom that we're expecting, especially in tourism over the summer. You know, there was so much to unpack here. But first of all, I want to thank you for pushing to reopen our businesses. We've been at this for a year. It's been a long process. Quite frankly, it's been an exhausting process to continue that battle, and you've been on our side, and I appreciate that. again, not a partisan comment. This is, my politics are pro-business, and you've stood up for us. We appreciate it. And then the many business relief bills as well that have helped float businesses until they've gotten to this point that happened maybe about 3-4 weeks ago. I'm going to ask you more of an open-ended question because I know it's on many people's minds. But in your opinion, you know, when we have this peacetime emergency powers we have an executive branch leader that's kind of calling the shots around this issue. How do you feel like the governor managed the COVID crisis, and what do you expect going forward?
I'll go last.
Well, I will give him high marks initially. You know, he stepped in and realized that we had a clear major problem and did the right things. But frankly, it kind of reminded me of trying to let one horse out of the barn, and rather than and just let one out, he just threw the barn doors open, and the agencies went completely wild with the best intentions. Don't, I mean, they thought they were doing the right thing. We slammed our schools into a situation where we still have not even remotely recovered. We've done so much better out in rural Minnesota with our school boards and school district compared to what they did in the metro area. And it's sort of like heading a freight train down the road. He was fully loaded. He got rolling at about 70 miles an hour, and he still doesn't have a brakeman slowing things down. We've got some huge issues that there's no excuse to continue with, and that is the exemption on evictions. That is just destroying our low-income housing. Those are the kind of, and preaching to the choir now, for particularly you property owners that are in the rental business, those are the kind of things that are actually hurting the poorest among us by crippling our housing industry. And we've got some work on the UI side. And again, this is more of a federal issue. We're going to have to tighten up that process with UI, with unemployment, because we got people driving right by help wanting signs. And I'm not sure where they're going to make their job application, probably finding an old stump out in the woods and talking to it for a while, and maybe somebody's signing them off. But we've got to tighten that up, because those numbers that I think Matt had mentioned earlier, where we got literally a match 1-to-1 of people on unemployment and known open jobs now. So yeah, high marks initially for the governor. He refused to really allow us to get involved. I mean, to this day, at least on the House side. Now the Senate's been a little more fortunate because he had to listen to Leader Gazelka and the rest. But yeah, you know, we long ago need to put this in the rearview mirror. Don't get me wrong, that coronavirus is a dangerous thing, just like strokes, heart attacks, the flu, pneumonia. You can go on and on, but we have got things, I think, in perspective here, and we've got to move on because we're going to still be mired in the COVID-19 thing, chasing our tails, and we're going to get hit with another big issue and not even have the resources to put to it. I mean, we need to be looking ahead here, because there's going to be challenges on the front end here, and we can't continue to be trying to adjust the rear view mirror while we're roaring down the freeway, because I see some, hopefully this won't happen, but I see some potential economic issues that are on the horizon because of inflation. So,
All right.
Matt, if I can jump in after Dale, you know, I agree with Dale. I think the governor started off doing a good job. I think you know, weeks or a month into this, he should have brought the legislature back into the fold and into the process. I'm going to use a Dale Lewickism now. At this point, I think the governor needs a kick in the pants because he just is not paying attention. He made a comment last week that he doesn't believe that this extended unemployment insurance is affecting hiring at all. And to me, that is completely out of touch and not paying attention to what's going on. I think our governor has not been the governor of the state of Minnesota. I think he's been the governor of the DFL, and I think he's been the Speaker of the House. There's no question, and Dale, you can jump in if you want to on this, but he certainly has managed the House through this last session, and he seems to only pay attention to DFL members. And the last time I checked, he's the governor of the state of Minnesota, and he should pay attention to every legislator, and he does not. Thanks.
All right, thank you, John, and we'll move over to Senator Rude.
I think we're all in agreement. When we first had the pandemic, we didn't know. But, we have 201 legislators, and the talent in the legislature is amazing. They come from all walks of life. They have all this experience to bring, and not to avail yourself of the tremendous talent that's there and the ability to govern. There's so many things that have fallen to the wayside that should have been addressed. But I think when the governor ran on the platform of One Minnesota, I don't think we ever thought that the only one in Minnesota was going to be the governor. And so it's very disappointing that he doesn't engage. We have issues going on all over besides the pandemic that need to be addressed. Right now, we have a chronic wasting disease crisis in northern Minnesota that is it's really a crisis, and we have no governor to lead us through or help us through that crisis, to make decisions or to communicate with us. And so it's been very difficult. Last year at this time, how we were the Brainerd Chamber really led the state of Minnesota in getting things open and getting the golf courses open and getting the docks in the water and the boats in the water and the camping open. And that's where we were last year. And it's surprising, not surprising, but it's disappointing that we are no further along the line and getting things open and done and taken care of. And I think we're all capable of doing that, especially all of our chambers across the state of Minnesota and Minnesota tourism. Not to avail yourself of all the talent in the state to help us get through this is really disappointing.
Okay, I'll give you guys a few updates on that. Just as along what Senator Rude talked about, think about that when fishing season, and he said his leadership said, just drive up north, but don't stop anywhere and spend any money. And it was just like, what are you talking about? And so I would say, if we right away, we passed $500 million with the governor and everybody was working together. But then it was like, anybody that's seen Lord of the Rings, he got the power of the ring and he just would not let go. So whether it was how he handled the riots, what he did with schools, closing schools, I'll tell you, a lot of states had schools open. Parochial schools were open. Many states were open because early the science showed that kids were not at risk, and yet we jeopardized their future by not allowing them to be educated the way they wanted. The decisions on bars and restaurants and churches, frankly, the churches, I worked with them to force the governor to open them up. There was a point where bars could have 50 people, and at the exact same time, churches could only have 10. Think about the mandated masks. Many states said strongly encourage masks, but never forced people, and then went around with a turn in violators and give them fines, the businesses, et cetera, on that. The eviction moratorium is still in place. Think about that, 15 months of free rent. It's just insane. Most states did not do that. Somebody mentioned the UI insurance. We got to get people back to work. We are telling him to do that. So it's been terrible. And what I would say is this is a national problem. Minnesota is one of the worst, but across the country, only 5 governors have given up complete emergency powers. And as a result, legislatively, 300 bills have been submitted nationwide to curtail or end emergency powers just because of how they're being used. And so because we're the only divided legislative branch, it makes it extremely difficult because I'm the short end of the stick with the governor working with the House. And so it's been frustrating. I hope we learned some really valuable lessons. I hope we look back and look at the science and just many decisions that were made that weren't science, they were political science, and let's learn from it.
Mhm. And Senator Gazelka, this next question, I know it's been addressed in some of the comments, but and initially yours, but I do want to hit a little bit on budget and taxes, because that's essentially the budget's reason for the special session that is potentially happening, hopefully happening here in the next week. You know, you mentioned PPP loans. That was our top issue, other than reopening one, and PPP tax second. And just to recap for everyone, I know a lot of you took out those loans that came through the federal government as part of the relief package. About 2/3 of our members actually took out PPP loans. And if you recall, those dollars had to be used primarily for payroll and spent within either 12 or 24 weeks last year. And so the issue was that the money that was received and spent for COVID relief then could potentially be subject to state income taxes that would be payable in 2021. They moved the tax deadline back to, I think, May 17th, if I remember right. And then I know you announced that, I think you referred to it as a global budget framework that would essentially promise to the business community that they wouldn't be paying state taxes on those PPP loans. You also stood firm on some other taxes. Can you talk about those budget negotiations in general?
Yeah, the key was the governor and the House Democrats wanted a fifth-tier income tax. They didn't want to give full PPP exemption. And so we just said, we're not going to do that. You know, we had over $1 billion of surplus. Another $3 billion came to the state. And what I would tell you, federal stimulus, over $18 billion has come from the last 3 federal stimulus bills. It's just that a lot of it went directly to local governments. A lot of it went directly to local schools and nonprofits. So tons of money came into Minnesota. But so we did fight off the tax increase. We did get 100% PPP. I will tell you, the Senate Republicans passed it in early March because we knew people needed to get it done. I'm very surprised that the House Democrats would not do that. We also gave 100% tax deduction for the COVID unemployment benefits that were paid out. So we were trying to help both the employer and the employees, and we thought it should be done right away. But it is agreed to. House, Senate, Governor have agreed that we will do that, and so you should expect it to be completely done no later than the end of June.
All right, that's good news. And you mentioned unemployment. I know that's been mentioned now by I think both representatives, and actually Senator, you mentioned it as well. Senator Ruud.
And let me hit that quickly too.
Yeah,
One quick thing on unemployment insurance. Because so many people used it, there's going to be an increase in unemployment insurance costs to the employers. And early, we recommended that we replenish that fund, the unemployment insurance fund. It's more than $1 billion short. We're not going to get that. Maybe next year, maybe the federal government will help. But that is an issue that we also were aware of and advocated for, but we did not get.
Mm-hmm. And you take the words right out of my mouth. I think the Commissioner Grove had suggested instead of 0.1%, it might swell to 0.5%, which would be another hard hit to businesses in 2022. This is a code red issue for, I think, employers in every sector. Everyone that I know, and I bet you everyone on this call, is looking for people right now. I just would like to hear some comments about how this unemployment issue relates to the workforce crisis. Maybe John, we can start with you. I know that you are in the hospitality business. What are you seeing, and what do you think the solutions might be?
Excuse me. There we go. Matt, as we spoke a little bit earlier, you know, we operate restaurants and a catering business in the Brainerd Lakes area, and we are really struggling, like all of the service businesses that are out there, to find enough help. And I think that I think that unemployment extended benefits is a part of that. But like we talked earlier, there's another part of it where people just don't seem to want to go to work in our industry. And I'd be interested to hear what, for instance, Matt and Ben have to say about that. You know, from a resort standpoint and a convenience store gas station standpoint, we just can't get people to come in and fill out applications. And I don't know how we're going to fix that. You know, the unemployment extension needs to go away. I think that's an automatic will help to a certain extent. But like you said earlier, rightfully, like you said earlier, you know, teenagers, high school kids, they don't have unemployment insurance and they're not filling out applications. I don't know what they're doing. You know, for me, when I was a high school kid, when we came close to the end of the school year, I started looking for a job
Mhm.
and, you know, for the summer. And it just doesn't seem to be going that way. They're just not applying. And I don't quite know how to fix that. So I hope we can get this unemployment piece changed quickly. It's coming up on its deadline. I hope it's not extended. You know, maybe Paul can speak to that a little bit. Um, but those, I think, you know, they're interesting issues that we just need to get fixed. And I, like I said to you earlier, our restaurants are open fewer days. They're open fewer hours on the days that they are open. Our menus are all smaller because we can't manage a full menu with the back of the house folks that we have. We just hired a chef that's coming out of Chicago, and we just hired a chef coming out of Minneapolis. And that maybe is the good thing that's happening right now is people from the bigger metropolitan areas are trying to move out into areas like ours.
Mhm.
So hopefully we can come up with a fix to this unemployment insurance piece and hopefully young people will want to get back to work in the service industry. Um, but I sure don't know what the answer is and how to fix that. Thanks,
And
Matt.
thank you. And Dale, before you jump in here, I'm reminded that my friend Ben Thuringer from Madden's Resort typed a question into the chat. Not sure if everyone knows about this, but the $300, what I'll call the federal top off to unemployment benefits ends September 6th. In the House, Representative Dave Baker, who I believe is out of Wilmer,
Yes.
had a bill that seemed to be getting some traction. Essentially, it incentivizes people to get back to work earlier than that with some degree of financial bonus, but they'd have to stay on the job for, I can't remember, it's 45 days, 90 days. For the two of you who are in the House, has that gotten any traction, and what are your opinions about that? And thank
Matt,
you, Ben, for the question.
Matt, I think Dave has got a good idea. Dave is obviously very, very pro-business and trying to get everyone back open and everyone back to work. I would say that he's got, and Dale, you correct me, but my guess would be 100% of the right side of the chamber is going to support Dave, and the left side of the chamber is not. For whatever reason, I do not know, and I know that's an awfully partisan statement, but that's just the way it is right now. And I
I,
see,
yeah,
and I see Dale smiling, so
I have to say, no, I think John is pretty accurate there. And, you know, for those of you that may not know Dave Baker, he's an old Aiken County guy. He's his wife is one of the sisters to the Paulbecks that own County Market. Dave ran retail and for many years continues. I believe he's got a motel and some other things in his area down there at Wilmer. So he's been in the business ever since he left the Aiken area. Yeah, you know, here's the thing, is Senator Gazelka said, the dollars are there. We're literally swimming in dollars. And you see some of the crazy incentive things that are out there, lotteries to get vaccinated. You know, we still have hungry people in this world too, but if that's what it takes, that certainly is one way to counter the federal government paying people to stay off the job. And I'm glad that Senator Gazelka put a rough number on that unemployment situation that we're facing. That's an example of the stuff that's out there ahead of the car that we need to be working on right now, because think about it. The businesses in the state of Minnesota are $1 billion in the hole right now. If we're going to replenish that unemployment situation on the backs of the businesses. And that's what I say, we have to take a real hard look at that whole unemployment process. And guess who? I mean, that's funded strictly by the businesses. Literally nobody else has ownership in that when it comes to pulling out the wallet. So that's one we've got to get out there. And we're not going to solve it getting out of this session, and we're probably not going to solve it till the next election. But we have to overhaul unemployment, I think, in Minnesota.
I think one of the things that's disappointing for me is pre-COVID, we really worked hard because we found out we had an issue where high school kids couldn't work at Paul Bunyan Land, and they couldn't work, they couldn't get jobs, they couldn't, and so we worked really hard to pass legislation that made sure that high school kids could do some of these jobs that they weren't being allowed to. And then COVID hit, and so they really didn't work. And now, well, when they can work and they can get a job, they're not in the job market. And so it's I don't know, Representative Poston, and it's a conundrum of why they are not into the job market, because it's not an unemployment issue, but they just simply are not interested in working in these jobs. And that's a totally different thing than we had going pre-COVID, because we worked hard to get them those jobs because they wanted those jobs. So I really don't know what the answer is there, but that's something that really has surprised me as we recover from COVID, that they're not interested now that they can do the work, that they're not doing the work.
Mm-hmm. And so I have two more questions. Maybe we'll take about 5 minutes each for each one, and then leave at least the last 10 minutes for Q&A for all the people who took time to participate. And I would just say, I see Jeff, you have a question in the chat, but if other people have questions, now would be the time to type them out so we can get to as many as we can. Senator Gazelka, I'm going to start with you on this one because you are in the insurance industry as a profession. I want to talk a little bit about health insurance, which maybe hasn't been the premier issue of this session, but it certainly has been in past sessions and honestly past elections. When we look at that individual marketplace, and you have so many businesses subsidizing, employees to buy their insurance through the individual marketplace, or self-employed people getting insurance that way. I think you led the charge, if I'm not mistaken, 2-3 years ago, for that reinsurance that essentially insures the insurance companies against these big losses to keep that market stable. I know that's not necessarily on the docket this year because of some federal funds that are going to supplement it. What do you think the outlook is for health insurance on that individual market as it relates to businesses?
Yeah, first of all, reinsurance worked. It stabilized the market, and we got at least 2 providers into every county when we were down to maybe none in some of the counties north of us. So it absolutely worked, and it absolutely is still part of the negotiating. We had 4 years of that. We had a waiver from the federal government for 5. They would not give us the 5th year. And their argument is there is some federal subsidies for people for the 5th and 6th year. And that's true. But if you're over 100,000 of income, you're going to get soaked with a lot more that you're going to have to pay because we're not doing reinsurance. And so it's still absolutely critical. I think the reason they don't want to do it is they're trying to move towards government-run healthcare in Minnesota. They want to be like the first state to do it, or one of the first states. So we're working on that. What we're also trying to do is get a second 5-year waiver from the federal government. So when if the subsidies end, that there is something in place that we can go to, because reinsurance stabilized the market. And that was one of the key things for everybody to get health insurance at an affordable price. So stay tuned. It is absolutely part of the negotiations right now as we look to the future. And just something I told the governor when he would not do it. I said, Governor, if this goes south and if the market again destabilizes, this is on you. And that's what the issue was 4 years ago. And I think, frankly, Republicans picked up seats because of their lack of planning. So stay tuned. It's a big deal. It's still on the table in some respects.
All right, yeah, thank you for that. And again, that's been more of an issue as of late as far as the business community looking at that. But so many people are buying health insurance off that individual market, and it's really, really important to keep that affordable for people. The other one that I'll maybe toss over to Representatives Post and Lewick and Senator Rude. I'm not sure if I have to kind of scan our participants here. I'm not sure anyone is here from the auto dealers industry. But one of the premier issues that I think would affect the business community in that sector, and really all of us, is this car emissions, this auto emissions standards that, without getting into all the details, essentially what it would do would give the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency the ability or the responsibility to abide by California car emission standards, which would be governed by its own oversight board. And why that's an issue, and we've all heard of California emission standards, but why that's an issue, it really drives up the cost of vehicles. And it reduces the choice that people have to choose things like SUVs and pickup trucks that are really popular to get around in the wintertime in the state of Minnesota. I know this has been a discussion and debate issue. What are you thinking about this idea of turning over our oversight into a California board?
Well, Matt, if I can jump in, I don't think we want to turn our oversight over to California. I don't think we want California's legislature to decide what we're going to do going forward as a state. And that's basically, what this would do. I don't think we're ready to make this move. I don't think it's the right move. I think there's an awful lot of work that has to be done on it, and I hope Paul will update us a little bit. I know you asked the other three to talk about this, but I know Paul has had some very direct conversations with the governor and the Speaker of the House recently, and is probably more updated on this issue than any of us, although Carrie, I'm sure, is quite involved as well. It just seems like a really bad idea to me to turn our oversight in the direction of our state over to another state's legislature rather than us taking care of ourselves. And Minnesota is a very different place than California. And quite honestly, California emissions and California air aren't really great. So I don't really understand, other than some political reasons, that this is being pushed forward.
Well, and that, we've had hearings on it in the environment hearing, and we know that it is really not a good fit for Minnesota. But beyond that, we have pushed the commissioner pre-COVID. She promised to have hearings throughout the state. She left the big donut hole in the middle of the state where they never came and talked to the constituency in greater Minnesota about California car emissions. When you put the moniker on it, clean cars, everybody goes, oh, I'd love to have a clean car, but that's not what this is. It's adopting California clean air standards and giving our ability to legislate to California. We have asked the commissioner over and over again to hold hearings. When she gave her a talk in our committee, the MPCA has one of the largest facilities in the state of Minnesota in Brainerd. They cover 11 counties in the region, and yet they could not hold one meeting to talk to the folks about what this means, what it means to the businesses. And I think that's really irresponsible. What we're asking for is not to stop it, but a 2-year moratorium so you can go out there and talk to the people in Minnesota. So the legislature has input on this. We have had no input on this whatsoever. We haven't been able to help make any decisions or anything. And so right now, I think the environment bill, they're asking for a 2-year moratorium, which is down from what they asked for before. So I think they're being very reasonable on it, but I'll leave it up to Senator Gazelka to tell us where it sits right now.
So, yeah, I'll jump in just to say the 2-year moratorium was a compromise. Keep in mind that this was not done legislatively. This is the governor just saying, I'm going to do this on my own, which again cuts out 201 legislators from the process. And it went to court, but the court said, well, he does have the authority to do this if he wants to. Whether he should or not is a different question. And so the 2-year moratorium would say, let's wait. And like Senator Root said, we're not anti-electric cars. They're coming. Manufacturers are making many more, but we want it to be a choice. And so right now, if when it comes into play, our dealers are going to have roughly 7% of their stock of cars electric, when right now the demand is about 1%. And part of it is because they're a lot more expensive. And so you're helping the elite, but you're not helping people that just want a low-cost vehicle. And so that's where the struggle is. What I have said to the governor is, look, I will take care of electric vehicle infrastructure. We'll put more resources into that. Just do a pause on the standards from California and let the market do its work. So far, he's unwilling to do that, which means I'm unwilling to provide electric vehicle infrastructure. And so we'll see. This is one of those ones that we'll see what happens in the very end. But he's pretty stubborn about the things that he wants to do that he doesn't want the legislature to have a part in.
Mhm. Well, yeah, thank you for that issue. I know that's a huge issue, not only for our auto dealers, but also for our border communities, those industries that could potentially lose business across the border of Minnesota, regardless of where they're located. I want to move now into some of our participant questions here. And I mentioned Jeff Wigg from the Initiative Foundation. Jeff, I'm looking at you. I don't think you're across the office from me right now. You look like you're in a different setting. But Jeff's asking about additional business relief grants or loans being part of the budget agreement. And I know the Initiative Foundation has administered those funds and done a great job with that. Senator Gazelka, that seems like a question for you. Additional business relief grants or loans?
Yeah, so we have agreed in principle to $150 million of grants or low interest loans. It'll probably be a combination of both. If it's low interest loans, we can maximize that 150 then creates a lot more capital that's available. Grants goes up quicker, but we're trying to work out the details. We would like it to be roughly 50% for outstate, 50% for metro. So Minneapolis can access it, but so can rural Minnesota. I think we'll get somewhere near those numbers. And then any of the money going to Minneapolis, I'm not going to allow the city of Minneapolis to manage that. Their government is very inefficient, not going to happen. So we're looking for another source. I do believe we have another source that can administrate it down there. It's same thing with police. We weren't going to give any extra money to the city of Minneapolis, but we did provide more money for police. Unfortunately, they just need a total overhaul of their city council. It's just, I don't even have a good word there, but I do expect something to happen though on the grants and loans.
All right. Well, thanks, Jeff, for that question. Becky LaPlante, Becky from Puringer Properties Investments. Just thanking Representative Lueck and Senator Root's office for the conversation about this Rent Help Minnesota issue. And I think one of you mentioned this before about eviction moratorium and how that's really impacted property owners, essentially for restricting them from making money if people aren't willing to pay here for the last year or so. They refer to that as the off-ramp to the eviction moratorium. Where do you stand on that? What do you think is possible there?
I better address that one. We passed a bill long ago that had veto-proof voting and a huge majority bipartisan out of the Senate that got rid of the eviction moratorium and created an off-ramp, gave them some time. Again, the House couldn't do anything. And the governor needs to put pressure on the House to get it done. But now it's so far down the road that we should just end it. We don't need an off-ramp. It's been extremely frustrating. We are one of just a few states where the governor has used emergency powers for that capacity. But many of the people that own properties like that, it's typically mom and pop folks that have 4 units or 6 units or 2 units, and they still got to make their loan payments. And so it's been remarkable that the governor has been unwilling to move on this. And again, he's an outlier. There's not many states that have done it like this. And certainly virtually none have it other than our governor.
I will jump in and say there continues to be an effort in the House, Senator Gazelka. Unfortunately, we don't have enough votes. We have tried to bring that bill up on the floor. And again, 2 people, Governor and Representative Hortman, the Speaker of the House, have refused to allow that to come up for an honest vote and let the chamber decide whether we can pass that on to the governor for signature. And I suspect that if that part of the leadership in St. Paul would ever let it onto the House floor, obviously it's too late now, but it sat there right until we adjourned. That would have passed with a veto-proof majority, because there's a whole bunch of my friends across the aisle that understand exactly what Becky and everybody else that's got rental properties have been going through. I mean, we're literally peening over the people that provide a huge amount of housing across the state of Minnesota. And directly, Becky, I appreciate, we've talked about this, and I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but believe it or not, you and I have been treated equally by that group that's running that corrupt and broken website. In fact, yesterday I got another little email saying they're pedaling as fast as they can on trying to fix that website, which is a capacity to help people that need help on rental issues. The problem is that's a 2-person deal there. You need the property owner and the applicant to be able to work together, and there are things that the property owner should be putting in correctly so it doesn't jam up the system that the applicant can't. And so Becky, I got to smile. I'm madder than hell, but I got to smile about this. I've got the same kind of brush off, oh, we're doing the best we can, that you did. So I guess I'm not sure that's a compliment that you were treated at least as well as the average legislator from the House of Representatives was on this issue. But it is something that, and this is why I am really frustrated with what should be a chief executive officer that manages his agencies. Let me say that again. Manages the agencies, the 35,000 employees out there. He shouldn't have to be talking to Senator Gazelka about stuff. He should be full-time asking every day, what are the problems in your agency and why, how do we fix them? That is not happening. Just put it to you the way it is. It's not happening. And the thing that our rental folks are dealing with is a classic example. It's one thing after another. First, we couldn't do driver's licenses. We couldn't do license plate renewals. Just one thing after another. Now we're dealing with this mess. And we got real money there to help those people get the rental payments up to date. And now the system's got it bogged down. I'm still slugging away. But so far, I got to be honest with you, I ain't made a whole lot of progress.
Well, and I just want to comment on the whole housing situation as a whole. I think we are really headed for a disaster in our housing market. We have an unsustainable real estate market right now. With homes going for 30 to 50 to 60% over market value. It reminds me of what we did in 07 and 08 when everything crashed. And then we have this, the rental issue where the folks on that end, some of them will not, they get to a point where they have no equity left in those rental properties. And so what's the solution? And I think we have a tremendous foreclosure issue coming at it as the snowball running down, coming down the hill. And I think our housing, the whole market in the state of Minnesota is really unstable and unsustainable. So that worries me a lot going forward. So if we could get an eviction off ramp going and put some stabilization into the marketplace, it would help us down the road.
All right, I think I've gone through all my questions here, and we're right about at time. One of the things I just wanted to wrap up with, just as the preview of what's to come in a couple of years here, is because we have the U.S. Census that'll lead to redistricting and some changes in how legislative districts are drawn. All 201 legislators plus the governor will be up for re-election in 2022. So there's been, some news around that, and I wanted to ask Senator Gazelka if he had any news to share about his own intentions to potentially run for governor, because I know that's been a rumor. So I'm putting you on record right now, Paul. What's coming for you?
Well, I'm going to finish the session first. I'll tell you that. Certainly, I am seriously considering it, but I have to finish the session before I make a final decision. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
All right, well, stay tuned for that, and we'll see if we can get you on record at some point. I want to thank all of our legislators for participating today, to generously giving us an hour of your time. We really appreciate that. I want to thank all of you for participating as well and staying engaged as chamber members and business owners. I want to do a real special call out at the end here to two groups: our board of directors and our government affairs committee, that lead this work and do it all on a volunteer basis. And I see a number of you on the line, so thank you for that. I want to recognize you for everything you do. So with that, we are at time at 9 o'clock. Everybody have a great day, and I'll see some of you tonight at Business After Hours at Paul Bunyan Land.
Paul Bunyan Land, see you there.
All right.
Hey, thanks everyone. Thanks for all the work you do for the Brainerd Lakes area. We are so grateful. All the services that are provided. Frankly, business owners are not appreciated enough. There are some that think that they don't pay their fair share and whatever, but you do so much for our community, and I'm just so grateful for all of you. And you got a great team of representatives. I mean, I love working with your House members here, and Carrie Rood is, frankly, she's only one of like 4 that have wrapped up the bill, so she knows what she's doing. So anyway,
you gave me the power.
Have a great day. Yeah. Take care, everyone.
All right. Have a good day. See everybody later.